waved.
I heard scratching on the screen, and I looked up, and I seen this thing. It was showing its teeth, and it was doing its hand like this.
There seems to be enough data, enough information, enough evidence for us to take these things seriously.
I know these creatures exist because I've seen them.
So loud that it just, the inside of your ears tickled. I mean, it shook them.
What really bugs me about the entire thing is people are so afraid to give reports because they're afraid to be ridiculed.
Yes, I think there's something going on, and I'm very interested in what these people are finding.
The creature is similar in description to the Pacific Northwest Bigfoot. Craig Woolheater, founder of the Texas Bigfoot Research Center, began investigating this after his own sighting on Memorial Day 1994. A day he will never forget.
As we approached, the headlights illuminated what I can only call a creature of about 7 feet tall. It was covered with hair and was walking on 2 legs. In the illumination of my headlights, it appeared to be grayish in color. And we both saw it simultaneously and said to each other, "Did you just see what I just saw?" as we passed. And we agreed that we both saw it. And I asked her what she thought she saw, and she said, "I think I saw a Bigfoot." And I wanted to go back to see what it was, and she didn't. So we just kept going, unfortunately.
Bobby Hamilton is another eyewitness.
Just outside of Garrison, Texas, it scratched on the window screen. When I looked to the window, it was motioning for me to come to the window. And I can remember the teeth. It was showing its teeth. I was petrified.
Fact is often stranger than fiction. Encounters with these strange creatures are not limited to the Pacific Northwest. Northern Maine. Natives who lived there would speak of man-like giants roaming the forests. In the 1800s, a trapper went missing. He was found dead near a stream. The body was mangled and broken. Blood was found high up in a tree, and it became apparent to those who found the body. They said that it appeared to have been picked up and repeatedly slammed against a tree. Many years later, loggers would report their camps being attacked by large, man-like creatures. Sometimes, though, it's not what you see in the woods, but what you hear that can change a skeptic into a believer. Imagine laying in your tent or sitting around a campfire late at night, and you hear this. Please visit us at SasquatchChronicles.com if you enjoyed the show. Last Wednesday night, I spoke with Jim Lansdale, and Jim had a lot of interesting encounters to talk about. He's one of the co-founders of the GCBRO, the Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization. Jim had so many great stories. I can't thank Jim enough for coming on the show. I know this Wednesday I'm working on trying to bring a special guest on who has probably one of the strangest stories I've ever heard. So look for that on Wednesday. Tonight I'll be speaking with Bill, and Bill actually works for the Sheriff's Department. And Bill and his brother had a strange encounter while they were out hunting. I'm working on getting Bill's brother to come on, because Bill's brother actually had a separate encounter too as well. A couple of years later, Bill's brother was out and had walked into a tree line and had one of these creatures actually stand up, and he was within a matter of feet from this thing. Bill, I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And what I'd like to do is jump right into your encounter. Can you tell us what you were doing the first time you had any sort of experience? Kind of walk us through what you were doing and walk us right into the encounter.
Yeah, you betcha. Well, basically, what we had, Wes, is we kind of had a canyon down there it was just very large, very, very big canyon, very deep, very dark pines, in the canyon. Not a lot of traffic through there. You get hikers and stuff through there every once in a while, but not a lot of people go into there. The experiences started when I was younger. The first one I had was probably early high school. I probably was a freshman, so this would have been back in about 1997 or 98. Me and 4 or 3 other kids about my age went for a hike up into the canyon. There's a good trail that went all the way up the bottom. It kind of followed a really nice creek up there. I had a dog, and he was a Rottweiler Lab cross. He was huge, and, he wasn't really afraid of anything, but for some reason that day he was just acting very, very strange, very skittish, like he was afraid. And it was weird. We were all kind of commenting back and forth about how there was just a weird feeling, how kind of the things were just really quiet and it wasn't normal. So we hiked up there about 3 miles, and while we were up there, we kind of were just dinking around, and we heard what kind of sounded like a large crash. And I don't know why, but to this day, I remember it as almost like a bolt of thunder. Like it just sounded like thunder for some reason. And then we heard a very loud yell. And the yell kind of sounded like the best way to describe it was an old police siren. But it was so loud, it just threw us all off guard. But I'll kind of try and imitate it. It kind of started out as a, oh, kind of yell is kind of what it sounded like, but it went for a long time. And being as young as we were, we knew that there was something up there that we didn't want to be involved with. So at that time, we all just took off running out of the canyon. Didn't have anything other than that day happen.
What was your conversation like with your friends? Was it all just...
before we heard the yell, it was just kind of odd. We were just all commenting like, man, it's just weird. Something don't feel right. And, I had this big dog that I usually took with me everywhere that never had any kind of an issue with anything, and he was just off the way scared, strange, wouldn't get off my ankle. And afterwards, I think once we got down far enough, felt comfortable enough we could start walking. We were just kind of like, what was that? Man, that was weird. We kind of really didn't know what to think at that time. I mean, we knew there was something there, just didn't know what, and hadn't heard that kind of a noise up in the mountains before, for sure.
I would imagine that'd be terrifying. You hear a crash, and then all of a sudden the thing starts vocalizing. Was it vocalizing in your general direction, do you think?
I think so. The canyon is very deep. It's got pretty steep walls. And on the south end of the canyon wall is just thick pine trees. And it was coming towards the top of the south wall, and a little bit down canyon, so it was even a little bit below us, but it was up on the canyon wallway, so up towards the ridge line somewhere. So I mean, it was a fair distance away, but you could hear it, like you could very, very clearly hear it. I mean, it stopped us all in our tracks, and we listened till it finished, and then we were off on the races. We ran right out of there.
Time to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't blame you. You had another incident with more vocalizations, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. This was maybe, and all this kind of happened pretty close to within maybe 4 years of the same time frame. Maybe a year or 2 later, I'm not for sure, but I know it was in the summertime. It was probably July. Me and another friend were camping in a campground that was just up above the town that we lived in, which was just below this canyon. maybe a mile and a half or 2 miles below. And we were sitting around a fire, and all of a sudden we heard, and it sounded like a fair distance away, but towards where this canyon was coming from, we heard almost what exactly would sound like a woman screaming, like just extremely loud. And it was far enough away that we probably weren't in any danger, but man, you could really hear it. We were both laying by the fire, and we both sat right up, and we hit the four-wheelers and headed out of there and went down to home, and we were asking around because there were some other kids and stuff that were supposed to come up camping with us, and they're like, yeah, we have no idea, we haven't been up there. This is all kind of in the same general area.
At any point, did you think, hey, maybe this might be a fox? Because foxes may...
No, I've heard foxes. I've heard mountain lions. And this wasn't either one of those. I've heard them on separate occasions too, the fox and the mountain lion, but no, it was weird. It was extremely loud. It was so loud, but it was very high pitched, like a female screaming. And it was quite a ways away, but you could really hear it. You probably could have heard it another mile away if you were listening for it.
Yeah, and that's the important part of the story. People might listen to it and go, well, maybe they probably heard a fox is what they heard. But a lot of times when these creatures vocalize, it's so powerful and it's so long and drawn out that no other animal comes to mind when you hear it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it definitely wasn't, and we spent all the time we could up in the hills, and, we've heard foxes and mountain lions and elk bugle and stuff, and it was definitely not even a question in my mind, it wasn't any of this, so.
This second time around, what did your friend say when the vocals are going off?
He didn't, this was a friend that was with us the first time, and we didn't really, our first thought was, it's somebody up there screwing with us, but, it was so loud and it scared us both so much that we packed right up and left. We went down and made sure we asked around, made sure nobody else was up there around, and they're like, no, we're not up there, and I don't think we talked much about it. I don't think, there was much conversation on that between me and him, just like, man, that was weird, kind of stuff, but we never really had much of a conversation on what we thought it could have been.
And how many years later did you and your brother have the incident with the truck?
This is maybe 2 years later that happened. So, right in the span of from my freshman year in high school till my senior years when all this stuff was happening.
And can you tell us about the incident with your brother?
Yeah, you bet. This was in October of the year. I don't remember the exact year. I know it was in October because we were up there. We had a late season elk tag, and we'd gone up to this spot, and this spot was one canyon to the south of the canyon we heard the first vocals in. And there's a four-wheeler trail that comes down the canyon, and then there's a spot down below the canyon that you can park, but you're still back up in the woods quite a ways, so you're still kind of out of the way of everything. We had the wheeler in the back of my truck, and we were just sitting there. This was before daylight, and I remember it was kind of cloudy. You could see the moon a little bit, but it was very dark. And I drove an old rebuilt Dodge pickup, and we'd gotten up there early, and we had the truck turned off. We were just sitting in there chatting, waiting for it to get just a little bit lighter so we could get out, get the wheeler unloaded, and head up. We'd probably been there, I would say between 15 and 20 minutes we'd been there, and all of a sudden we heard this just loud, just slap, and something hit the tailgate or the back of my truck. And the best way I can describe this, Wes, is it was an open palm. Something with an open palm, because it didn't sound like, you know, it had the force of, like, if I would have taken a baseball bat, hit it, it had that kind of force, but it didn't sound like that. It sounded like an open palm. So we both, me and my brother both looked at each other and were like, holy, what the hell was that? I stepped out of my driver's side door, and I was parked with my driver's side door was towards the road, and the road was maybe 20 feet away. And as I was standing there, my eyes were starting to focus a little bit into the darkness. And I heard something. In fact, we both heard something walking on the road that was just 20 feet away. And first thoughts were, is it's very heavy. Whatever it is, it's very, very heavy. And walking very slow. So as I'm trying to focus on this sound, my eyes are focusing from the darkness just enough. And I see a figure walking from my left to right. And, you know, maybe it was, the most I saw was a large shadow. But from where I was standing, the slope down to the road was maybe a foot. So I was maybe standing about a foot from the road, and this thing, I remember looking up to see the top of it. So I would guess, you know, whatever this was, it was at least 8 feet tall. It was very massive, extremely massive. But all I got was just a glimpse of a shadow. And right then that instance of fear kicked in, and my knees almost just totally gave out, and I almost fell on the ground, but I was able to pull myself back into my truck, and I told my brother, I'm like, we need to get our lights, we need to get our guns, and, you know, get out there and figure out what that was. And so we got our guns, got our lights, and jumped out. It was a matter of 20 seconds that we had gotten everything and jumped out, and there was just nothing there. We just didn't see anything there at all.
What did you think you were looking at the time?
I knew what I was looking at. I think I knew that it was a Sasquatch. Both of my brothers have kind of, even, you know, being in the mountains and stuff, we never go looking for them or anything, but we've always kind of had the understanding that they're there. We've always kind of thought, oh, you know, there's a possibility that they're there. We need, you know. So I think at that point, I think I knew what I saw, and I think even once it hit the truck, I think we both, you know, we weren't sure that that's what it was, but I think we both had an idea that there really possibly could be. And then once we heard it walking, it was like, okay, yeah, because it was just so huge, just so enormous.
I'm kind of curious, why did you grab your lights and your guns and want to go after it? We kind of knew what it was, Wes. We weren't really going to go after it, but I think we wanted to see it. We wanted to have that confirmation on it. Yeah.
And I had issues with my truck. I couldn't start it from inside. I had to go open the hood sometimes. I had to get wiring issues. So you'd have to jump a couple of cables together, and I can't remember what it was on, but starter cables or something to get it to start. So, I mean, we weren't going anywhere unless we got out.
I gotcha.
But I think, you know, I think we just wanted to know for sure what we saw and what we heard.
Just curiosity kicking in, like, what the hell, you know, what the hell just hit?
Yeah, I think so. I think we both knew, and I think that's why we had our rifles. But, you know, looking back, I think that there was probably more than one there. I can't even imagine how long the sucker could have been standing there staring at us through the window that it finally decided to, you know, do something. So.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those behaviors that makes you wonder if, and I think for people listening to this might say, well, it might be a person, and you don't you're a hunter, Bill, you know that you don't go and hit on another guy's truck without expecting either A, to be shot, or B, to get it handed to you. But it's really unique behavior that for it to come up and hit your truck like that and then walk off, it's one of those things that makes me think maybe on the creature side, it thought that would be enough to scare you guys and make you guys want to leave, and then you guys didn't leave. As you guys went for it, did you, I almost wonder if it was just kind of off in the brush watching you guys as you guys went and looked for it.
See, and that's what I think is possible. I think that it maybe just went off of the road and there was very high sagebrush right there, and it could have just laid down or hunkered down and we wouldn't have seen it. If it was a human, it would have had to been, number one, very huge, very large, and number two, very extremely strong, because with the force that it hit this truck, and this truck was a 1970 camper special, and they're built as solid as any vehicle it can be, and it hit hard enough that you could feel it rocking.
Wow.
It actually rocked it forward a little ways and back and stuff, so.
What did your brother say?
The weird thing is we jumped out, we looked around, we didn't really say a whole lot. After we didn't see anything, we unloaded the wheeler and just headed up the canyon and didn't have any other incidences that day or see anything further that day. But that, it's just weird. We didn't really talk much about it. I mean, we've talked a lot about it since, but as far as that day, I think we were both like, yeah, okay, though, this is probably what it was. We kind of both just had a small understanding that that's probably what it was. And
do you ever still go back to that area to hunt?
I haven't for a long time, and I'm trying to get my older brother, and he's the one that kind of steered me towards your show, because he knows I've had these experiences and stuff, and he's like, you need to listen to the show because this is the real deal. And that's what got me started. I keep telling him, I'm like, listen, we need to go down there and spend a night down there, and he's like, F you, there's no way he's going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't, that's crazy, it's for it to come up to the truck like that.
It
very,
was.
very, very ballsy.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of, it was an aggressive encounter, but it was aggressive and then it up and left. It didn't stick around. There was a guy I want to say in Washington State, and he was actually stuck in the mud. His friend left to go get help, and he stayed with the truck, and then this thing came and hit the back of his truck just like it hit yours. And he thought it was he said it was the force of, kind of like if another truck had backed up against your bumper and then was touching the bumper and then hit the gas. It was enough of that force to push him forward. And it just terrified him, except for that one didn't leave. It actually came around, and it was looking at him, and it started rocking the side of the truck, and they were eye to eye.
Oh, wow.
And it was rocking the truck, but,
yeah. Oh, I think, Wes, I think it could have, in this experience, I think it could have turned out that way if I wasn't able to pull myself back into my truck. And as soon as we were loading deer rifles, and I kind of agree with you guys. I kind of think these things are dumb, and if they would have looked in and saw that, they'd have been like, okay, well, we need to hide now, because we had the rifle, we were ready to, we jumped out with the rifles shortly after this happened. So.
Yeah, I think they're like anything else. I honestly think these are primates, and it's the same category as we are. It's the same category as gorillas are. It's the same category as chimpanzees, in the sense that everyone's a tough guy until someone calls your bluff. And it's even with people, with gorillas, and they'll do these little displays, and you could even take it outside of the monkey family and go with humans. Guys will sit and give you their resume and tell you how big and bad they are, but the minute you don't back down, all of a sudden now they don't want to fight. Almost like it bumped the truck, assuming that you guys would probably leave, and then you guys didn't leave. Not only did you not leave, you both got out of the truck, and it was like time to go. So it just went down the. I'm glad you got to look at it though. You got a chance to actually look at it and see, even though it was kind of a dark shadow, you kind of had an idea of what it was. It's an amazing encounter.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was definitely interesting. We still talk about it quite a bit.
Yeah. If you ever get a chance, you have to come down with me to Texas, and there's some. That's Jurassic Park down there, man.
Oh man, I'd love to. That'd be crazy. Man, that'd be nuts. I listen to them experiences on your show, and I'm just like, holy crap, that's just crazy.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I went down there. I thought it was complete Jurassic Park, man. I'd never heard so many vocals in my life when I was down there.
Right.
Yeah, you don't hear too many reports. I think when a lot of people think of Idaho, as I was telling you, I rode my motorcycle through most of Idaho.
Yeah.
You think of a real flat plains.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of portions of Idaho that aren't flat plains. There's a lot of wooded areas,
Oh yeah, yeah. And you hear people that a lot of your skeptics are like, no, they couldn't hide out. Something that big couldn't hide out in the forest. And I'm like, come saddle up with me and let's go for a ride. I'll show you places that you never even thought existed, and then I'll show you some more. There's just a lot of, it's so vast. I mean, it's just incredible.
Well, Bill, I can't thank you enough for being on the show.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate it, Wes, and I'd appreciate you guys are still doing the show. I know you guys kind of put up with a lot of crap, but I'm glad you're still doing it.
Thanks, man. Next on the show, I speak with DC, and DC had an interesting encounter. He was out for a hike, and on one side of the trail, he saw a Sasquatch. On the other side of the trail, he saw a black bear. Very interesting encounter. DC, thanks for being on the show. Really do appreciate it.
Of course, no problem. Thanks for allowing me to be here.
And let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Can you talk about what you were doing right before your encounter, and then walk us into what happened?
Sure. We were actually going to a state park in this area. It was me and my fiance and her daughter and my daughter. I wanted to go hiking that day, and in order to get the girls on board, we had told them about a beach at this park. There's a pretty nice beach on a lake, and we said we would take them to the beach, but first we wanted to go hiking. And when we got there, we had gotten a park map, and we parked our car by the beach. And on the map, they show some campsites there, and I didn't even know that they had campsites. So I said, hey, why don't we hike to the campsites and check them out, and then we'll hike back to the beach. So that's basically what we were doing that led up to what had happened.
Now, prior to this, did you believe in Bigfoot, or what was your take on the whole subject?
Well, I did. Where I live now and where I lived at the time is way up in North Jersey, close to the New York State border. At the time when I started getting into researching about Bigfoot, and I lived closer to New York City, so there was a lot of online stuff I'd be watching, and I was really into the videos that analyzed other videos. I watched a ton of them, and when my fiance and I started looking for a house, and we came up north here, it's actually one of the things that was on my mind, going into the woods and spending time in the woods, and I started researching, sightings around here. So I was pretty excited about it and pretty into it for probably, leading up, a year leading up to the actual encounter.
So you guys are walking down this trail, and then what happens?
We're about, I would say, 4 or 5 miles in. We had taken a wrong turn, and we were deep in the woods. And at that point, I figured it was easier to continue walking forward than to turn around and go back, because I knew that we had walked about 4.5 to 5 miles to this point. So my fiance and her daughter were, I would say, about 30 yards ahead of us, and her daughter she had had enough. She was screaming and crying, I remember thinking, like, she sounds like a wounded animal. You know, like, I remember thinking, like, everything in the forest knows we're here and is looking at us right now. My daughter and I were back a little bit, and there was as we were walking, and there was a huge puddle in the middle of the trail. And up inside the puddle, my daughter and I were holding hands, and she had let go of my hand to go around to the left side, and I was kind of going around to the right side. And I guess about halfway through the puddle, I noticed, I looked over her head, and there was a huge rock. And I noticed as we cleared the rock, there was a big bear, I would say close to 300-pound black bear, standing right there looking at us. Man, it freaked me out. But we have bears around here. Like, we're pretty used to bears, but I didn't want my daughter seeing the bear. I didn't want her to start running, so I kind of was talking to her and trying to get her to keep her eyes on me, and I'm still watching the bear. And I noticed the bear did something like I'd never seen before. The bear put its snout down towards the ground and started walking backwards and, like, shaking its head to the left and to the right. And I was paying close attention to what the bear was doing, because of course I didn't want it to start walking towards us. But I've never seen a bear walk backwards like that. And just as I'm thinking, like, what is this bear doing, I hear a noise to my right, which is to the opposite side of the trail. And my first thought was cub. I thought, oh my God, like, my heart dropped. Like, I thought, oh my God, there's a cub. And so I turned my head to the right, and there it was. There, I would say it was, man. I never really, like I told you, Wes, I never really talked about this. Like, my heart's pounding right now. I would say it was about 25, 30 feet away, or maybe like 30 yards away. And it was leaning up against a tree. I want to say he. I feel like it was a he. I didn't see any kind of genitalia or anything, but I just feel like it was a he. It was leaning up against a tree. He had his right arm, like his right elbow, leaning against the tree, and his left arm kind of just down by his side. And he was just standing there, looking at us, almost like he was looking to see what was going to happen next. It wasn't any type of a threatening posture, or it just looked like a guy basically standing there looking at us. But obviously not. I mean, I couldn't believe how big, like how wide he was. And man, my lips went numb, and like I've never felt anything like that. Actually, I was thinking about the fear. And one time I was on my motorcycle. I had like a crotch rocket motorcycle, and I was flying down the highway, and I started to go into a wobble. And really, the only way to get out of that is to slow down without slamming on the brakes.
Really? He slowed down in a wobble?
Yeah, like you just got to kind of let off the gas and let it slow down.
Oh, I guess.
Because there's nothing you can do, you know?
Yeah.
And I was doing over 100 miles an hour when it started.
Oh.
And when I got out of that, I pulled over to the side of the road and got off my bike, and my body was almost numb. My legs were like jello. Like the fear, I mean, I thought I was going to die, you know? And
yeah, no, I can relate to that. I've been in that situation. I was doing well under 100, but for me to get out of that wobble, I actually had to speed up to get out of it. But once I got out of it, I know exactly what you mean. And you get off the bike and you're like, I can't believe I just survived that.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I had to sit down. I'm on Route 80, which is a major highway here. I had to just sit down. I couldn't even stand, but, and I couldn't even imagine speeding up more. And maybe that's what I should have done. But yeah, I just let off the gas and let it slow down. Anyway, so that fear, that's the way my body felt that night, is pretty close to how I felt at that moment in the trail.
So what time of day is this, DC?
This is I would say this was around 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock.
You got a pretty good look at this thing then.
Yeah. Yep, I did. I mean, it was, yep, I sure did. But I tell you, like, it's so crazy because the bear, I'm used to bears. The bear, I was basically looking at it right in its eyes. I remember holding my right arm up, just to, I don't know, make myself look bigger. I didn't want to start clapping or yelling or anything like that because I didn't want my daughter to freak out. I just wanted to kind of look bigger and keep my eye on it. But when I saw this thing off to my right, I was so intimidated that I could not look it in the eyes. I mean, I just couldn't do it. I mean, I immediately looked down, and I'm holding my left hand out because the puddle me and my daughter are getting closer and closer together, and I just wanted to grab her hand. I'm looking like at the top of my eyes, like through my eyelashes at this thing, and oh man.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, you just stepped between two of the biggest predators out there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, at this point, the bear turned to its left and started walking away from us. Like the black bears around here, they usually run away. You know, they don't want anything to do with you.
Right.
And for some reason, I know exactly why. Like once I saw this thing standing off to the right, I wasn't so concerned about the bear anymore. You know, like I did look at the bear, and I was kind of looking at the bear, but
right, you got bigger problems at this point.
Yeah, I couldn't even wrap my head around what I was looking at, and I mean, it's like, you know, obviously, like I can compare as far as it's standing on two legs, I compare it to a human, and it could have broke out in a full speed run at any second, you know, and I mean, there was just nothing I could have done. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's just ridiculous to even think that there was anything I could have done, you know?
What was your impression of the creature? Did you think, looking at this, it was an oversized monkey? What was your impression as you looked at it?
That's a really tough question. I don't want to say I thought an oversized monkey, no. A man in a costume, no. I mean, it looked like a monster. I can't wrap my head around what it was, you know, and I couldn't at that moment. And you know, the craziest thing, Wes, is that, and I'll be dead honest with you, when I went up there with my fiance and these two little girls, I was looking for like Sasquatch tree breaks or footprints, or, you know, I was up there like an amateur idiot, like just like hoping to see something, you know.
Did anyone else notice it?
No. The girls, my fiance and her daughter were up ahead, and her daughter kept sitting down and saying, like crying that she can't walk another step. They thought we were going for like a 10-minute hike. We've been gone for hours now, you know. And her daughter kept thinking like we can call someone to come rescue us.
Right.
So she would drop to the ground and be like, "I'm not moving anymore." And me and my daughter would catch up to them, and I'd say, "Come on, get up. No one can come help us. We're almost there. We're almost there." I knew there was an end to the trail. I'm looking at a map, you know. So they were up ahead of us. I was looking around. For some reason, I feel like this Sasquatch wasn't standing there as we walked up to it, like as we walked up to this point. Because I feel like it was so huge, I would have seen it if it was up ahead of me to the right as I'm walking. I would have seen it. There's just no way. It's just too big. If it walked up to that tree while I was walking, it was silent because I didn't hear it. And the way it was standing there, it's almost like it made a noise on purpose for me to look over its way.
Did you happen to get a good look at the face?
Man. Yeah, I guess so. At this point, it's like I don't know. Like I feel like I was looking in its eyes, but like I don't remember like staring in its face. I don't know if like my mind is like painting the picture at this point.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, you're basically going into shock at this point.
Yeah, and I don't know. I would say that it did look. The face, it had the features of a person. I mean, it had a nose. It was a flatter nose. It wasn't like a pronounced pointy nose. I didn't notice any ears. Big square jaw. The jaw was square, like a Vander Holyfield, like in his prime, how he had that square, prominent jaw. A lot, definitely hair all over its face. But the cheeks, I could see the skin in the cheeks. It was a darker brown color, I would think. The creature itself was like a reddish brown. Now that it's getting nicer out here, and I'm driving my car. I live in the woods, so there's trees, leaves all over the ground, dead leaves, and that like orangey brown that's left on the ground now. Now that like spring is here and all like the deadfall, like its hair fits right in with this color. It's like a reddish brown,
kind of like an auburn color.
Yeah, right. Like if it laid down in this like deadfall, I don't think I would have seen it. If I knew it was there and I was looking at it, I would have seen it. But like if I didn't, I think I would have walked right by it. Like now when I'm driving my car, like going to work and things like that, I'm always looking off the road into the woods and things like that. And if the only way I would have seen it is standing up the way it was, because if that thing laid down, it seems like it would just blend right in.
Did the creature make any sort of movements, or was it pretty still at this point when you're looking at it?
Body completely still, but as I'm walking, the trail kind of goes down a hill, like not a big hill, just like it slopes down and bends to the right. So as I'm walking, it's turning its head and following us as we're walking. Eventually, the way the trail goes down to the right, I lost sight of it, and I just kept walking. And right when I lost sight of it, I caught up to my fiance and her girlfriend and her daughter, because she had sat down and she was crying, saying she didn't want to walk anymore.
You grab your daughter, you guys start walking down the trail, and it's just kind of moving its head, watching you as you're walking down the trail. I realize all of this is happening within matters of probably a few seconds. It's not, and I understand that, but did you ever look back and think, why didn't you grab your kid and just take off running?
To be completely honest with you, I couldn't have run. There's no way. I could barely stand.
Yeah.
I mean, my legs were shaking, and I never felt, my lips went completely numb. Like, I don't know if I instantly started hyperventilating or what happened, but my whole body reacted, and I had no control over that,
So what happens next? You grab your daughter, you guys are walking down, you catch up with your girlfriend at some point, and then what kind of happens next?
Now her daughter's on the ground crying that she's not going to walk on a step, and so I feel like we need to get out of there, and so I mouth to her, "Big bear," and she catches that and gets her daughter up, and we start walking. Now she thinks that there's a big bear behind us, so she has some urgency to go too. So we've picked up the pace a little bit. We keep walking, but we still have a ways to go. I mean, the total hike was about 7 miles, and we were at about 4.5, 5 miles at that point. So it was every noise, I thought of every single story I heard on your show. Any movie I've ever seen where like an animal stalks the people walking through the woods. I mean, this is all going through my head. And I couldn't speed up. I mean, if I start, I couldn't. It got to a point where I got myself together, and if I wanted to start running, I could have. But now I have these 3 girls with me. 2 of them, my daughter was 6 at the time. I couldn't believe she was still walking. She had asked me to carry her at a couple points, and I couldn't. I mean, it was just an exhausting trip. And at that point, like, after I started to get my feeling back, like in my legs and things like that, I felt exhausted.
Yeah, I would imagine that's probably the longest 4-mile hike you've ever done, trying to get out of there.
Yeah, so when we got, I guess we got about it was about the 6-mile mark. I think it was a little under 7 miles, like looking at the map now. So we're walking, and we see 2 people walking towards us, an older guy and a woman, and now we hadn't seen a soul, like another person, this whole time. So finally we see 2 people, and I couldn't wait to find out, like, how close they were to the end of the trail. And I said, how close are we close to the beach? And the guy said, yeah, it's a little less than a mile up. And it was like the girls were very happy, and there was like a lunch truck that sits at the beach. They give drinks and food and all that, and we had been talking about, we weren't prepared for this. We didn't know we were going on a hike like that, so we had been talking about, like, what do you want to drink? You could have double. Like, I was telling the girls, like, you could have whatever you want. And so when they found out we had a little less than a mile to go, everyone was pretty excited about that, including me. But I kind of felt like, up until that point, every noise that happened around me, it was almost like every single noise freaked me out, because a lot of the stories, like I said, all the stories that I've heard started going through my head. And a lot of the stories are like, yeah, the Sasquatch, paralleled me through the woods, or the Sasquatch chased me to my truck, or, like all these things. And, like, I didn't see him again, and I kept hearing all these noises around me. And at one point, I even thought about the bear and realized that there's no way, like, the Sasquatch I saw is the top predator there. There's just no doubt about it. So, like, that bear probably got out of there. It's like, it wasn't too comforting knowing, wow, I don't have to think about a bear because there's a Sasquatch here,
Right. It's kind of like, don't worry about the tigers, there's a lion around.
Yeah.
No, I understand that. And the other thing, too, is bears don't stalk you through the woods. Either a bear's going to fight or they're going to walk away. There's no in between. They're not going to sit and stick around and stalk you. The noises that you heard, do you think it was pacing you guys out?
I don't know. Like, all right, so now at this point, like, after I don't see him anymore, I'm paranoid, right? Like, over paranoid.
Right.
And
you're hypersensitive at this point.
Yeah, and scared out of my mind, right? So every single noise was amplified, I think,
Sure.
But there were noises like sticks breaking. I mean, those are really the kinds of noises I heard. Like, I didn't hear any, like, vocal noises, like nothing like that. It was all like noises that would happen from disturbing the ground or whatnot. Like I know one thing I heard. I heard a noise and I kept looking over that way, and the noise was scaring me. Like, it was making my heart pound. And I saw a squirrel pop up, and like it was like, whoa, man, it's just a squirrel. But like the original noise that made me look to my right and saw the creature, like, it sounded like it's almost like if it was holding a stick in its hand and it just broke the stick to make me look its way. That's what it sounded like.
I got you. So at what point, so you guys finish out the trail, did you talk with your fiance and say, hey, by the way, I saw more than a bear?
Nope. And this is the first time I'm saying this story out loud.
Why do you think you kept it in?
Well, like, I have been into you know, like an armchair researcher for a while, you know, watching the videos and you know, I get excited when I see a good video and I'll show her and not that she doesn't believe, but I guess she feels, oh, it's possible, but she doesn't necessarily believe. I guess, like, I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. It's a good question. Like, I just, I did tell her about the bear, you know, and I felt like I was getting out a half-truth. You know how, like, you feel a little better if you're telling, like, a half-truth rather than nothing at all, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I can
know.
understand it. I think a lot of people, you'd be surprised. I think most people in your situation don't come out and say, hey, this is what I saw, this is what I experienced, because they're afraid of people going, oh, really? Or, you know, did you see Martians too? You know, it's that same type of mentality. You know, it's this guy sees unicorns and he sees, you know, Bigfoots running around. And it's kind of a shame that, you know, when you start digging into a lot of people's encounters, most people don't come forward like how you have. Most people will hold it in most of their life and not really say anything to anyone. But I think a lot of people like you, they're really interested in the topic. They'll start looking up stuff, you know, because you've experienced it. It went from being something that's kind of interesting to now it's on the pages of reality for you.
Yeah. When we got to the beach, right, like we had basically, as far as the kids were concerned, we were going to the beach with a little bit of hiking. And we ended up like a lot of hiking with a little bit of beach. By the time we got to the beach, there was only a half hour left and they were closing the beach. So they went running off to the sand, and after they got their stuff in the truck, and I remember I got a Snapple, and as I'm watching them run off to the sand, like I found a park bench, and I sat down, and what we had did was this huge lake that this beach is on, we had basically walked around the whole lake. We went in on the left side, like facing the beach, we went in on the left side, and we came out on the right. And like when I just sat on that park bench and drank my Snapple, I lit a cigarette, and I couldn't believe that this creature is out there. Like the woods that I'm looking at, it's back there somewhere, you know. And I was wondering, like how many people does this thing watch, and like, is it thinking about the fact that it saw us, you know, like it is such an amazing thing to think that these creatures are out there. It's just really, it blows my mind, you know.
Probably what brought it in was the kids crying.
Yeah, that's what I think so too. She was really making a ruckus for quite a while at that point, you know.
Has this changed your perspective on going out?
Yeah. I mean, it changed my attitude towards it. Like before, it was a reality. I almost thought it would be great to see one, you know. And now, like I want to see one again, but in like circumstances that I'll never be able to get. You know, like I'd love to see one in a cage, because I don't want to come across one like that again. You know, I feel like I was very lucky. I mean, if these things do injure people, or I mean, I had 2 kids with me. There was nothing I could have done. You know. And we can't carry guns in Jersey, you know, like, and I couldn't have even brought any kind of decent weapon that I could carry onto the state park. And I wouldn't even done that with my kids with me, you know. Has it changed? Absolutely. Like it's a different thing living where I live now, like knowing the town I live in West Milford, right? And the town I live in, the Appalachian Trail basically cuts through it, as well as cuts through this park we were in. If you look at the sighting map, like all along the Appalachian Trail, there's a bunch of dots, you know. So they could be anywhere. I mean, if this massive creature was able to stand, they get that close to me, then they could be anywhere. You know, they're definitely masters of the forest.
Yeah, they definitely are. I mean, it makes me think of people that go missing, but what's unique is in your situation, you all stay together, and you always hear about one person getting too far ahead or one person falling too far behind, and these things are watching. It's terrifying, man. They're out there. I mean, they're definitely out there, and it's usually when you least expect it. You know, in your situation, God, I can't imagine being stuck between, I mean, let's face it, two of the biggest predators out there, a bear on one side and you got a Sasquatch on another. It makes you wonder about that bear, why the bear was, how long was the bear standing there watching you guys, do you think?
Well, the bear definitely didn't walk. The bear must have been standing behind that rock for a while, because I didn't see the bear walk up to the rock. You know, like, as we were walking past the rock and that side of the rock started to get into my view, it was just standing there. And like, let's say, take my daughter and I out of the picture. The bear was on one side of the trail, and the Bigfoot was on the other side of the trail. Like if they were both standing there together, they were staring at each other, waiting for us to walk through. You know, like, which is very odd. That's why, like, I don't think the Sasquatch was there. Plus, there is no way something that big walked up to there and I didn't notice it. You know, like, or was standing there, like, just standing there. There's just no way, you know?
Yeah, it probably came up on you guys. You know, I probably wasn't there when you guys, it was close. It was probably close by. But I honestly think that the kids crying is probably what drew it in. You know, if you're walking down this trail and you got kids who are, you know, they're burnt out on hiking and they're whining and they're crying, I think it's going to draw these things in. It's kind of like when we were out at the Browns and I had the idiot idea of playing the baby crying, and something just came crashing through the woods right to it. I think that draws them in, and whether it's a good intent or a bad intent, I think it's a bad intent on when they hear that and they come in. You know, even though you have two kids with you, there's also two adults there, and most primates won't engage in something to where they might get hurt. You know, they're going to pick and choose their battles. And if you're alone, I guarantee it might have been a different story. But even having your kids there, it may have come up and realized there was two adults there too as well. It's interesting that it kind of just stood there and watched you guys walk off.
Yep. And I'm like 5'10". I mean, standing next to this thing, I look like a kid. You know, like I can't imagine it looking at me and saying, "Oh, that's an adult that's going to protect his child with its life." You know, like it's just unbelievable, the size and the difference. You know, like it would have been like if that thing threw me around, it would have been like me throwing my 6-year-old. I mean, just with ease. You know?
Oh yeah, they could have their way with you pretty easily, and there's not much you can do about it.
I wonder if the way the bear reacted, I wonder if the bear noticed it there when I saw it start walking backwards and like pointing its head down and like almost like it was shaking its head like it was saying no, like shaking it back and forth. It was walking backwards and putting its head to the left and to the right, to the left to the right, and walking backwards. And I almost feel like the bear saw it right then.
Yeah, and it probably did. That sounds like bear behavior when they're trying to exit an area with regard to a fight. You know, most black bears will just kind of bolt, but I have heard that behavior out of black bears to where they'll kind of walk out, you know, almost like they're preparing for a fight, but they're trying to get away. I can't imagine being in a situation where you run into something like this and you have your kids and you're unarmed. I mean, that had to have been just terrifying. I mean, just completely terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I lost control of my body, basically. You know, like, it was that scary. Like, it wasn't that long after this happened that right here in my town, a college kid got supposedly stalked by a bear and killed by the bear.
And was this reported that he was killed by a bear?
Yeah, it was actually, it's a park, I would say a mile down the street from my neighborhood, right in my town. The story was that these college kids came up here from, like, Jersey City or something, you know, come up into the country to do some hiking, and they saw a bear, or they saw some other hikers that warned them of a bear. Then they saw the bear, and the bear started following them. So they all ran, and they split up. And when they finally got to the main road and met up again, one of them was missing. So they called the police. The police went in the woods and found the bear guarding the body, and the bear had already started eating the guy. You know, like, and that's pretty well known information in the area that, you know, they did shoot the bear. Apparently the bear ate some of this guy. You know.
That's interesting. I've never heard of, you know, black bears generally won't stalk you. I don't think I've ever heard of a black bear stalking you. That's an interesting story. I know grizzly bears will, and grizzly bears, you know, even like in Yosemite, grizzly bears will stalk hunters, not to kill the hunters, but they wait for the gunshots to go off, and then it's an easy meal. They'll go steal the kill. There must have been something going on with that bear, because I'm telling you, man, most of the time with black bears, they will run from you. Unless you corner them or they have their cubs nearby, then you're going to have problems. But generally, for a bear to kill a person to eat it, a black bear anyway, generally that doesn't happen too often. I mean, it's really rare.
Yeah, there's a couple of weird things about that story, and this is, I mean, it's a true story. It happened. It was well known in town, right? But, like, here's a couple of weird things about the story. Number one, they released, right? So apparently the bear kills this kid and eats certain parts of this college kid. They released the 911 tapes, and I could be wrong on this. I feel like on the 911 tapes the kid didn't say bear. He said, you know, we're being followed by something or something like that, right? So, all right. So I'm sorry I missaid that, 'cause that's kind of speculation. But so what they did though is the cops put the actual police report on the web. And then, like, a couple weeks later, so then this story, I feel this story was actually told by someone on your show. And I feel like after that, someone must have inquired about it, because the cops then released pictures from the actual kid who got killed, pictures from his cell phone of this bear that he had taken while he was trying to get away from him. And I just feel like that's a little too much information to release. Like, it was just odd that they would do that, you know?
Oh, yeah, no, I know which episode you're talking about now. Yeah, that was actually a kind of a weird, that whole thing with that kid. Now I know exactly what you're talking about. That whole story with that kid being killed by the bear, I'm telling you, there was something else going on there with that story. There's a lot of things that don't make sense about that story and about that kid getting killed by that bear. I mean, there were just a lot of weird things that didn't add up with that story.
Yeah. And it's the first black human killed by a black bear in New Jersey history. It's just very odd to me, you know?
Yeah, I don't...
It's very odd.
Yeah, I remember that story now. I'm pretty sure that wasn't a black bear that killed them. I don't know, though. You know, I wasn't there, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't a black bear that killed him. You know, a lot of times, too, if something's stalking you through the woods and you're terrified and you're calling 911, you're not going to sit and snap pictures of the bear that's stalking you.
Right, and that's why, like, when they released those, like, it was like 7 photos taken from the kid's phone of the bear, and it's like, it just seemed a little too convenient, you know?
Yeah.
All right, let's put me back in my position, right, with my encounter, and here's the bear, and I'm scared for my life. I'm not going to take my phone out and start taking pictures, you know?
Right.
I mean, if I had the balls or the courage to do that, I would have taken pictures of the Sasquatch that I saw, and I would have had the best pictures that anyone's ever put out, you know?
Yeah.
To even think of me reaching in my pocket to get my phone, I mean, I don't even think I thought about that till a week later. Wow, I could have taken a good picture, you know? There's just no way. I was trying to get my phone out to take a picture. Just no way. There's no way. You know, it's almost silly to think about.
Yeah, it's the furthest thing from your mind. And that's, you know, people who talk about, well, why didn't you just snap a picture? That's someone who's never been in that situation. It really is the furthest thing from your mind.
Yeah, there's just no way. There's no way. So yeah, so that's a crazy story about something that happened around here. And now that I know for a fact that these creatures are around here, it's crazy. And, you know, you were talking about before, how, you know, people who don't talk about it and who do talk about it, you know, I'm in North Jersey, and like, it's much different from like where you live, where people are more open about it, and it's a subject that people talk about, and you might bump into someone at a corner store who's got a story to tell you, you know. Around here, you're hard pressed to find someone that will even talk about it, you know, like it's hard to ask anyone, you know, if they're into the subject or anything like that. Like, well, I was listening to a show one time, and the guy had said that he wears some kind of Bigfoot T-shirt out, and whenever he wears it, like, people come up to him and they tell him like their encounter or that or their thoughts on it and things like that. So to be honest, I think like subconsciously, in an attempt to get someone to talk to me about it, because I really do want to talk about the story. Like, I ordered a shirt, right, that's got like a outline of a Bigfoot. I think it says like, I believe, right, and I wear it, and not one person has ever come up to me and said like, oh, me too. More people make fun of me with the shirt on. You know, not strangers, but like, you know, more people bust my chops about the shirt than actually. I don't think I've ever had anyone say, "Oh, me too. You're into this or whatnot." You know?
Yeah, it's it's completely different. You know, out here on the West Coast. I mean, even here in like Portland, Oregon, and I think there's like 4 or 5 bars that you can go to. One's like the Sasquatch Bar. One's the Bigfoot. What's it called? The Bigfoot Inn. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 bars that are actually called, either have the name Sasquatch or Bigfoot in them. I mean, you can even walk up to the hospital, the main hospital out in Portland, and there's a big cutout of a Sasquatch, right there in the waiting room. It's just a different mentality. I think as this starts to come out and people start to come forward and start to say, hey, you know what? I saw this out in the woods. And that's the great thing about the show, is that people come forward, and I think more and more people start listening to encounters, and people who come forward and say, hey, I saw this out in the woods. It's that mob mentality, in the sense that if you ask a group of people how they feel about something and no one raises their hand, but then there's the one guy that raises his hand and tell you how does he feel, all of a sudden everyone starts raising their hand in the group, and they'll start telling you, you know, once one person does it, then the other people will say, you know what, I ran into this, and it's just one of those weird subjects to where no one really wants to talk about it in most parts of the country. Down south, out on the East Coast, people don't want to talk. Here in the Pacific Northwest, I'll say people are way more apt to talk about it and things that they've seen. But I'll see if I can't put you in touch with a few people out in that area too as well, that you can go out with and look, because they are in that area. I get reports from them in that area. It's kind of like I was telling you the other day. I think when a lot of people think of New Jersey or, you know, that whole area, at least out here, my mindset from being on the West Coast, I think of a concrete jungle, you know, cities but it's not like that out there. There's actually a lot of forest out there. There's a lot of beautiful areas out there. People would be shocked. I mean, they are out there.
Oh, you know what? I forgot to tell you about this. Like, and this is something that I don't know if it was a Sasquatch or what it was, but I mean, I don't know what else it could have been. Right when we had gotten the house up here, it was, you know, it was a beautiful night. We're sitting on the deck, and we were around a bonfire. Me and she's my fiance now, but she was my girlfriend at the time, and we were sitting there, and we were just talking. And now we have woods. All the woods in this town, like most of them, you know, connect to other woods, and it's just, you know, just either go on and on and on. And I mean, it sounded like almost right, like the house across the street from my house, behind that house is all woods, and it sounded like right behind that house. And the only thing I can compare it to is like, let's say like two primates one primate's got something in its hand, and the other one wants it. And it's going to make a move to like run up and grab it. They start screaming frantically for a second, and then it's silent. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I know exactly what yeah.
Like they're fighting over something, and they scream frantically for a second, and then they stop. You know, it's over. Well, we heard something like that right back in the woods, and I looked at, this was before my encounter, and I looked at her and I said, Bigfoot, and she laughed, like, yeah, she laughed at me, but then I said to her, like, what else could that have been? And even she was like, I have no idea, but that sounded like a monkey, and that was so close to my house, you know. I don't know what other animal that could have been. It was crazy, and it was loud. I mean, it was like, it was really, really loud. It was shocking, you know. So yeah, I believe that they are all over the place around here, and I mean, I just feel like if something that big got that close to me, well, then it could be anywhere, and unless it wants to be seen, we would never know it was there.
Especially with something that can go from, quadruped to biped and back and forth, if it has to. It's something that can definitely disappear if it needs to. I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I want to thank you for sharing. I mean, I really do appreciate the fact that I'm the first person that you told the encounter to. That means a lot, man.
Yeah, it feels really good to talk about it, and it's really an honor to be, to talk about it for the first time with you and on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and stay in touch, man.
I will. I definitely will, Wes. Thanks so much, and I love the show. Keep it up, and I'll be waiting for the next one.
My final guest tonight is Kurt, and Kurt had a pretty interesting encounter. Kurt kind of grew up knowing about these creatures. His grandparents and his parents would talk about them down there in Oklahoma, and when he had his encounter, he kind of knew what he was seeing, but it still is a shocking encounter, and it's an interesting encounter. It's a behavior of observation. Kurt, thanks for being here. If you would, just go ahead and tell us what you're doing and then walk us through the encounter.
Okay. I was out fishing with a buddy of mine. We fished quite a bit on these flood control reservoirs, which are fed by all the creeks that run up through here. They all either enter or exit the Canadian River. And we were bass fishing in a two-man bass boat. He was turned around facing the channel, the open area, casting with a crankbait. And I was, like I said, 3 yards, I imagine, away from the bank, flipping into some brush. And that's when I saw him.
Can you describe what you saw, and what was the creature doing? Just looking, was it in the brush looking at you, or?
Right, right, 2 or 3, maybe a yard or less from the bank, was a line of heavy trees and brush. But that's why we used a two-man bass boat, because there was no way to fish from the bank. So I thought at first, I kind of glanced up, and flipping is a little different. If you're not familiar with that, where you're from, you have a longer rod, and you are hanging off the line with your left hand and using the pole to swing the lure, a worm or a jig and pig or whatever, into the brush, and you just kind of dip up and down and move on to the next. And it's quite a boring way to fish, but that's where the big ones lurk at, And I thought it was a squirrel coming around the tree. They'll play that little hide and seek with you, where they always say you need 2 guys to go squirrel hunting, one to flush him out around the other side. They'll just spin around that tree and hide from you. And that's what I thought it was at first, because there was a little brown and dark, until we moved up just a little bit further, and I could see a shoulder and a knee where this thing was squatting down behind this tree. And when we got into position, I just thought it was a squirrel, so I just kept fishing until I looked and I saw these eyes and that face, and it looked like a teenager, I guess. And I wouldn't call it human. I'd call it more of a primate. I call them prairie apes. And he looked at me, and I looked at it, and I was kind of, I wouldn't say I was in shock. I wasn't scared. I actually couldn't believe what I was looking at. I think this thing was thinking the same thing about me. In fact, I whistled a little bit between my teeth, just kind of a like that, and it would look at me and turn its head side to side like a dog when you'd make a noise that it's not familiar with. It'd turn its head sideways like the RCA dog in front of the old speaker emblem.
Right.
And we did that. That went on, and my buddy was still fishing, and I knew he couldn't see it anyway from his position in the boat. He was turned the other way. And I watched it for, it had to be 3 minutes, just me and him staring at each other. And I kept, well, I wasn't really fishing at that time. I was just pretending to, in a way, because I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And then I nudged my buddy to make it a short story. I nudged him and said, you want to meet our fishing buddy? And he goes, yeah. And I don't know what he expected, but when he turned around, he laid eyes on it and just shouted out, I think it was a profanity, like, oh my God, or something like that. And this thing's eyes, and that's something about those eyes. They were just slightly, in all due respect, Down syndrome type, roundish, slightly googlish, bulging, eyes. And when my buddy turned around and shouted, those eyes just about bulged out of its head, and it stood straight up, ran to its right on 2 legs until it got to a pile of woods, hopped over that. When it landed, it was on all fours, and then it was gone. I mean, like lightning. And that's that whole encounter right there. That was my first encounter.
And what did your buddy say? What was the conversation like afterwards?
He was just kind of stammering. I was extremely calm. I grew up hunting, fishing, and tracking, and I had run into stuff, and his whole disposition was incredibly excited, stammering, couldn't even hardly talk. And finally, when he calmed down, he goes, what was that? And I believe that was one of them wood apes. And he went, it's a Bigfoot, and I said, yeah, that's, some people call him that. And I was real calm. I don't know why, but I've reacted to a few dangers and things like that my whole life. I don't panic. Maybe I'm just stupid, but
Did you, well, I don't think you're stupid. I think that, in situations like that, sometimes that's how you have to react. But did you have a knowledge of Sasquatch prior to this? I mean, did you know about these creatures prior to this?
Sure. Yeah. I guess the very first thing I ever knew about was when I was a kid. We had something right in this area. As a matter of fact, it's about a mile from the site of the one of the documented Chicken Man. You can Google that. It described exactly like all your Bigfoot encounters. And they called it the Chicken Man because it was breaking in to chicken coops and stealing people's chickens. And the farm, and it was also some sightings along the North Canadian River prior to an afterword of this main encounter I'm getting ready to tell you about on the Palmer farm, which is just right, a BB gun shot from the river. This thing had broke a door down or somehow forced it open and got him a bunch of chickens. And the farmer, Mr. Palmer, took that door with a greasy handprint on it over to the Oklahoma City Zoo and had the expert over there examine that. And I don't know how many people examined it, but you can look at it on the old Daily Oklahoman newspaper print. You can see the dermal ridges. It's plainly a primate hand, greasy handprint on this door. And so that was my first bit of that. Of course, all the people around here, farmers and hunters and everything else, a lot of them just said, oh, it's a man in a suit getting him some chickens. But I think a lot of people knew better than that, and they still do. They just don't talk about it much around here, like you said earlier. Wasn't long after that the Patterson-Gimlin film came out, and that brought in a whole new genre, pretty much, of Bigfoot enthusiasts, and I've been interested in it ever since. And then, like I said, in '88 was my first encounter, and
How
so I knew what I was looking at.
How tall do you think the creature was when it stood up?
I judged him because I got out of the boat and walked over to see what if he was messing with anything or eating anything or left any tracks. And I judged his height about at my own. I'm 6'2", and I figured that's about how tall he was. Not big, and he didn't look anything really to me like the Patty image at all. He was slender at the waist, very slender at the waist, muscly. The chest was real muscly. The arms were muscly, maybe 1.5 inches long hair, except around the under part of the forearm. It seemed to be a little longer right in there. Little chin hair, like best way I can describe it would be like Shaggy from the old cartoon.
Yeah.
Just there was a pronounced brow ridge, very primate ape-looking face.
Do you remember if it had a hooded nose?
Yes, it did. Yep, it was again, I stumble on certain words. I want to be politically correct.
You don't have to worry about that.
Well, it was a hooded nose. It was not long like mine. It was more negroid. Yeah, I guess that's politically okay to say.
Yeah, kind of a wider nose.
Yeah, but it wasn't, the nostrils were not wide open, like you would look at a gorilla. Any picture of a gorilla, the nostrils are just quarter sized and right there in your face. It wasn't like that at all. It was definitely a hooded nose with downward nostrils.
Do you think that you didn't freak out? Do you think that you didn't freak out because you're in a boat and it didn't really show any aggression at the time?
I do. I do. I think also not only being in that boat, but thinking in my mind for at least a minute before the other 3 minutes that I was looking at one of the many squirrels, that was peeking around looking at me. And that's the way squirrels do. And, sometimes you'll see a tail flicking, and sometimes you'll just see, they think they're hiding from you, but they're not quite around the side yet. And that's what I first saw, is, some hair around that tree. So that's what that's what I thought it was. And when I didn't see a face right off the bat. I saw a knee and a shoulder. So that's when I started going, oh, wait a minute, you know.
Well, thank you, Kurt. And like I said, stay in touch, man. I sure appreciate it.
Yeah, post more stuff when you get a chance. I enjoy you don't post a lot, but when you do, it's worth looking at.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it very much.
Okay, Wes. Thank you.
Well, you take care of yourself. Thanks so much for listening tonight, everyone. I really appreciate it. Appreciate all your support. And I will see you on Wednesday. I have a guest that I'm working on. One of the strangest stories I've ever heard. So look for that Wednesday night. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great night.